Welcome. I'm your host, Nancy Burdick, and this is So Many Possibilities, a program dedicated to showcasing what's new in the local fiber art scene. In today's episode, we'll focus on the adult fiber artist. Adults of a certain age may remember their middle school home economics courses. When I grew up in New Jersey, middle school I had wood shop, metal shop, drafting, cooking, and sewing. And in Mrs. White's sewing class, the requirements for passing were threading the machine in less than a minute and completing a self-interest project. So I mastered threading the machine, and I mastered the denim duffel bag. Hadn't touched a machine in probably 20 years after that, and I have no idea where the duffel bag is. So fast forward, graduate school, I'm in Philadelphia, I'm working at Children's Hospital, and I am working with the Amish population, and I am fascinated by quilting. I learned a lot from the Amish women who came into clinic each Monday, but still did not take a class or make any move towards beginning quilting. About 18 years ago, when I was here in town, I met Jean Birchman, and she introduced me to quilting. I took a class with her at the HCA, and I learned how to make my very first quilt. I knew that quilting was something I was interested in, but I knew I wasn't going to be able to learn it from a book, and I found it hard to learn it really well through an online tutorial. So I liked attending a class where I had somebody right next to me, right on my side, showing me, take this fabric, put this here, pin this here. And I was so glad that the HCA had that class, and I'm so glad for all of you who are interested in picking up fiber art that there are resources in the area. Today's episode is focusing on one of those new resources, Barn Swallow Quilts in Holliston. It is much more than a quilt shop. Take a look. Thank you for letting me join you here at your shop, Lisa. We're at Barn Swallow Quilts, Central Street, Holliston, Mass.
Yes.
Not very far from all the major roads. We're not far from 495. We're not far from 90, so easy to get to. Beautiful shop. Big, bright windows, and so much color inside. But you've not been here very long, so can you tell me a little bit about how you chose this location and how long you've been here?
That's a great question. Thank you. I've lived in Holliston 26 years, and I'm a retired occupational therapist. I've worked in the school system. I worked at McLean. It was my last full-time job. And then as my son was in middle school, I did after-school art programs, teaching water-based oils, pen and ink, graphite for 5 years. And I loved doing that. But I also like quilting, and I like working wool on wool, which I just taught myself just because it was interesting, I suppose. My mother taught sewing for the Singer Sewing Machine Factory. And she made everything. And in her sewing room was a little wool rug with red pansies on it. And I think I remember asking her once what it was made out of, because I knew it wasn't made out of quilting cotton. So I knew that you could sew wool on wool and make things. And I didn't even know that wool applique was a thing. I was just going to do it by the seat of my pants. I'm intrigued by fiber. I was very fortunate, and I attended a boarding school in Kentucky with my free will. And every day, girls wove in the weaving room 2 hours and 15 minutes on floor looms. My petals were 1256, 1652. And I don't know if that was a Lee Surinder rug or which one that was, but I wove every day. And there were ladies, this was their day job. They came in the morning, they sat and they ripped wool coats apart. So unbeknownst to me, I have had textiles displayed in a variety of settings. So I have, and I didn't know what repurposing was. I didn't know that repurposing was a thing. I just knew that an old wool coat could be turned into a woven rug. My mother braided some rugs. We had one in the dining room, but her her braid wasn't very tight, so we always longed for the day it got washed and it would shrink down, and then it would rest. But and she did some rug hooking, and I remember I was young. I was maybe in fourth grade, and I remember helping cut strips. So I went to art school, and I took every art course I could find, color design, layout, pen and ink, sculpture, painting of every kind, and I loved it. I ended up in healthcare, but that's another story. And so when my postcard from the Austin Independent School District came and said I could retire, it wasn't very much money, and I'd only been there like 6 years before I moved to Boston. And so I said to my husband, do you care what I do? And he's like, well, what are you thinking? And I said, well, nothing more than a tiny fabric shop, a quilt shop, full of bright colors. And he said, it sounds just like you, go for it. So it's been a journey. My mother had a health food store for like 30 years. My sister ran a print shop. She went to art school and worked before computers at Peachtree Printing in Atlanta, Georgia, and did all the stripping of negatives by hand. I mean, there were no computers. She's in her 70s. So my father was a professional photographer and had a studio. So we just have grown, my sister and I have grown up with our parents doing independent things, independent businesses. So it didn't seem that huge of a process that I could do this. Now, the learning curve has been huge, but I'm setting the store out. I handpick every piece of fabric. There were 2 or 3 companies I was going to start with. I've started with fabric that's comes into the East Coast, so I'm not paying for shipping across the United States. And I think anyone who's taken any art classes know that a teacher could say, choose 4 bolts and some white, and your finished product is your grade. And there, you could choose anything in here and make a beautiful quilt. You can have 2 colors. You can have, yellow and white, blue and white, orange and white. It doesn't matter. Or you can do negative space, which would be grays or taupe. So I'm about color. I mean, I have color wheels here. My whole life has been about color and what looks good together. So I guess our mothers do impart a lot of wisdom to us that we don't know. But because she taught sewing at the Singer Sewing Machine Factory, she made the drapes in the house. She made the slip covers, the cafe curtains in the kitchen windows, and any curtain anywhere. She went to Sherwin-Williams, and back then, we're talking in the 60s, you got little tubes of paint, and she would custom blend her paint to match the fabric in every room of the house. Wow. So I just grew up with sensitivity to color, sensitivity to design. She always wanted linen. I don't know if they would be drapes, linen curtains in the dining room, but the living room were more drapes, but then they had the pastoral scenes on them. She made slip covers for the furniture, but everything was color coordinated. So that's kind of, the background. And my sister went to art school, and both my mother and my father were good artists. She did pastels, he did oils. So not only were they independent people who had businesses, but they were also artists.
So this is the merging of your interest in being a maker, yes, as well as being a resource.
I'm very interested in making a community of people who can have multiple hobbies and crafts. We have women who do knitting, cross stitch, wool applique, but they also quilt. So in that process, we all know, all of us have stashes of fabric, some that we're totally impassioned with and we may never cut because we think it's too beautiful, and other fabric we're not sure why we bought it or what we're going to do with it. And so what I have said to people is, you are more than welcome to make a donation of clean fabric, because in our classes we will look at color, we will look at how to make shapes, and everything can be used. There's nothing that can't be used in the cotton category. I pretty much don't accept upholstery material. I do have some drapery material, and I have some cotton drapes that'll make beautiful jackets. There are wool blankets that would make jackets. So there's a variety of textiles that can have a second life. It doesn't always have to be new and never anything else but new. So we're kind of an interesting store in that we are blending new fabric with repurposed textiles in the effort to get people thinking, what can I do? How can I use this? How can I not be wasteful with this? And people make all kinds of things, table runners, pot holders, art quilts, and any number of things can be made.
So you say it's a store.
Yes.
And so this store offers classes for people to register for and come on a regular basis to
Yes.
complete a project.
Yes.
Some are workshop focused where everybody's working on the same type of project. Do you say table runner, or is it everything is individualized?
We could do private, semi-private. I think we have room to probably put in 3 people with 3 sewing machines right now. And I have a group that want to make pillowcases, that they want to make sure that they're confident in sewing their 1/4-inch seam, and this is a non-threatening activity. So that would be more of a community group, people coming together to do that. Then I have people who are like, I have sewn before, and whether it was in 4-H or a badge in some scouting group, they have memories of using grandmother's sewing machine or mother's sewing machine, but they haven't sewn in a long time, and they sometimes come in with a very specific project. I want to make a jacket, a simple jacket, and we can do that. I've had couple people say, I'm not really interested in making a quilt, but I would like to pick up my sewing skills. So that means maybe they want to make summer blouses, or they want to make pajamas, who knows, but they just want to feel more confident with their sewing skills. So the OT in me says, it doesn't matter where you're at in your skill level. My job is to meet you, find out what you're comfortable with, and then nudge you on. And one of my students was in a class with like 18 people, and then she came and had a private lesson with me, and she said, I've learned more in 1 hour with you than I did in the class with 18 people. So, and she had a mechanical brain, and she really understood how we were putting pieces together and why. And so my job was to find out what her strengths were and build from there. And she had a blast. We had a great time.
So one person, or as you say on, I think you said Open Sew, or
Well, Open Sew,
Is
Open
it
Craft, we can have up to 6 people here because they bring projects. We haven't had 6 sewing machines, but we've had 6 people bringing in a cross-stitch frame, a wool applique in their lap, knitting, crocheting, handwork.
Is that more a social sewing, where they are doing their projects together? You're not instructing.
No, Open Sew, Open Craft is, let's make a community. What are you going to work on? And they've been absolutely delightful. Lots of common interests. So we're really all the same pea out of the same pod, in that we're crafters. We have various hobbies, different phases of our lives. We've been into different activities. And so I don't knit and I don't crochet, but just about everybody else seems to do one or the other. But they're also interested in expanding I mean, they will say, I'm going to get into this. This is appealing to me. Other people have said, I'm just so thrilled to have some place to come while
Well, right.
while
So
I do my
it's a
activity.
shop,
Yes. We're a store.
sort of community center,
Yes,
sort of
we have a
workshop,
community
right?
machine. We have a FOF 4.2 mechanical machine. You need to mend something. I had a woman come in who said, my machine just died and I have one more seam in a Christmas stocking. May I please come in and use your machine? I said, absolutely. That's why we're here. So we have a community sewing machine. We're going to do a hand sewing class. What we found is there's a lot of young people, 30s and 40s. Maybe they just have bought their first house in the neighborhood and they did not have any home ec. They don't know how to sew a button on. They don't know how to measure a pant leg, cut off the access, but leave enough to roll under or turn under, iron, and hem. Like, that is
right. They could learn that from Google or YouTube, but you'd have to keep running it back and running it back to follow
right.
it.
It's
So
much.
you're live.
I'm a live
you can help
person.
them
Yes.
walk through this.
Yes.
Which is a fantastic resource.
Yes.
And I've never heard of a community sewing machine.
Really?
That makes my heart light because we have people who look longingly at our work as quilters in the Marathon Quilters Guild and they'll say, oh, I wish. And you can tell they don't want to make the commitment to go buy a big machine or they don't have the time. But if they had the opportunity to come in to an open craft or come in and see you or call you on the phone and just get a chance to speak with you, you'd be able to point them in the right direction to finish
I think
what
there's
they want.
3 machines right now that if people walked in, we would just put the machine in front of them. One's an old Bernina, one's an old Elna. We have the FOF. I mean, they're good machines and they sew. And so if that's what you need, we can set you up with a machine.
Well, I know we don't have, at this point, thousands and thousands of viewers, but if we have some people watching us now who've seen earlier episodes, they'll have met Kathy Racine, who is our Massachusetts guru on machines. And she is someone who you use as a resource and work with. And she was recently here, wasn't she?
Yes. So the FOF, I took an old FOF to another person and they said, oh, it's just too old. And I explained to them that I've only used mechanical machines. I'm just sewing. I don't need anything fancy. And I'm interested in construction and making things. And so the person said, check out this 4.2. It could last 40 years. It's a mechanical machine. There's no computer chip in it anywhere. And you start a young person on it, they will give it to the next generation. So I said to Kat, and they didn't have any in stock. So I went to Kathy and said, do you have any of these? Like, they sound miraculous. And she did. So that's how I'm using the mechanical machine.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
That thrills me. The other thing that I'm reminded of when you're talking is, I don't know where I came up with this, but I find myself extremely hesitant, almost fearful sometimes, to cut into fabric that I invested a lot of money or time shopping for. And so I started to institute something in my mind called Why Not Wednesday. And I sit down on Wednesday and I say, well, we're going to give it a go. And that's what it sounds like this whole place is about. We're going to give it a go. I'm going to walk you through this.
Right. Well, many people are hesitant with the free spirit or K-facet fabric. And that's why the store is set up by color, because if you're making a quilt and you're impassioned about a certain colors grouping that you want together, if you can stand back and say, okay, this is the most absolutely gorgeous, the chrysanthemum is out of this world, or the purple cabbage leaf is stunning, but it's color, and I'm going to use it as color, it takes the fear out of it. So there's many reasons why the store is set up by color, but to me, this is the only way a quilter's brain works, in my mind, is by color.
So to take the fear out of it, they can look online to barnswallowquilts.com.
Yes.
They can call you on the phone.
Yes.
They can drive by this shop in Holliston, very easy, right around the corner from Fisk's, if anybody is thinking of a landmark.
Yes.
and your hours are posted and their classes are posted. So it's all available for them to read at their leisure and then come in and see you.
Yes.
Well, what is the class that is riveting people currently? Is it making a jacket like the one that you have on, or repurposing things?
There's a lot of interest in the art quilt, taking a theme and turning it a passion theme. So you could have collected um, oil painting art, or you could have collected watercolors, or I have a woman making a turtle quilt, and she said she found a beautiful National Geographic photograph with the sunlight coming through the water, and of course the turtles in the foreground, and then all these shades of blue with the light is in the background. And then you get this kind of muddy blue that you can tell might be a few fish, and then there's some fish up front. And she's like, I don't care if it takes me months, but I'm so intrigued that now I have somebody to support me to build this. It's like her stress management. And so she comes here on her lunch hour, and it's the highlight of her week. She's, looks forward to this every week for this opportunity to come in. We spread everything out, and we work for an hour, and then she's back off to her job because she works at home. So I try to accommodate every student with what they need. We have some students that need morning classes, some afternoon. Hers is specifically a lunch hour, which she's just not available for her office. And then we will have some evening classes. We have some Saturday classes, and the t-shirt woman who does t-shirt quilts wants to do a Sunday afternoon. And then I think, I'm not into football, but she said whenever there's a big game, we might as well just open and let people come and sew during football. So,
So you do not bristle at the comment that you are not a typical quilt shop. You embrace that wholeheartedly.
I revel in it. I'm thrilled to be told I'm not the cookie cutter quilt shop. I want people to expand their brains, have fun. Creativity is questioning, trying something. Did it bring you joy? Does it bring you happiness? Does it make you smile? Do you have to mathematically think for a few minutes and then you solve something? Is it rewarding? If it's all those things, I'm the shop for you.
Today's how-to is how to make a mug rug, a quilted mug rug. There are a lot of different tutorials available online. In the credits will be some links to a few of those, but I'm going to show you how I've made mine in today's how-to. So we're on to the how-to, and today's how-to is a little tiny project called a mug rug. And this is what the finished project, this one's a little bit fancy, but a mug rug is something that you can make and gift or make and use every day. And it's something that you put your mug on to keep the condensation off your desk, or keep your area clean, and sometimes a little cookie on here. You can make these many different sizes. Many tutorials online offer 4x6, 5x5, 7x10, anything smaller than a placemat. So it's really up to you. You want to make sure that you plan mug size if you're giving it as a gift, and how much space you want to have. And then you want to gather your materials. So I'm going to put the mug over here. Again, I'll show you the little mug rug. This, I used my scrap Valentine's fabric. You can do these for holidays. You can do a nice little birthday one. You can do a elementary school focus, any novelty fabric. This one, again, Valentine's fabric. I used scraps on the front, and I used a Valentine fabric on the back, and I'm going to show you how I made this. So first I need to get my glasses on. So first you need to assemble your materials. So as I said, I have some Valentine strips. I had a larger piece of fabric I was thinking about cutting. I have a piece of batting. I decided that my finished project was going to be 5.5 by 6.5 inches. So I got a piece of batting, piece of scrap batting, and cut that. This is 6.5 by 6.5. I wanted to have some overlap. And I also wanted to have a piece of backing fabric that was going to be big enough. So my backing fabric, of course, will be pretty side down, and my batting will be in the middle of the sandwich. And then whatever I'm going to use for my top fabrics, I'm going to have pretty side up. And I'm going to show you how to make this by quilt as you go. So these are the materials: scrap or fancy fabric, novelty fabric, piece of scrap batting or cut to the size that you'd like to eventually cut down for your finished project, and a backing fabric. And first, you're going to take some scrap that will be long enough to overlap from corner to corner, and you're going to pin it down. And here's what we talk about sew as you go. You're going to take another piece of fabric like this. You're going to put it on here, but you're going to make sure that the piece you take goes all the way covering your batting. You're going to pin it down, and you're going to sew right along here onto the batting. So I happen to have that next step done for both sides. As I said, I took a piece of center, put it on the batting, it overlaps. I took another piece and I placed it on top. I used a 1/4 inch seam, and I made sure that the second piece ran over the batting, sewed it here, pressed it to the side, did the same thing on this side, pressed it to the side, and eventually you cover your entire square of batting. The back is going to show you you're going to run over. You want to have extra. You want to be able to have extra so that you can decide how big your mug rug is going to be. I took my piece, I kept adding strips all along the way, and ironed, pressed it down, and then covered my 6.5 by 6.5 inch square batting. I then took this and I put it on my fancy long arm machine, and I quilted it with this meandering little tiny, I think it's called stipple 2. And I have my backing, I have my batting in there, and I have my top, and this is my sandwich that I have quilted. Now I'm going to take it and I'm going to cut it down to the size that I want. And as I mentioned at the beginning, the size that I wanted was going to be a 6.5 inch by 5.5 inch. And then I took my binding, I made a little bit of binding, 2.25 inch binding, and I sewed it on, and then I hand stitched it down to make this little mug rug. And in the center here, it's very, very faint, and it was such a small amount of fabric that had some hearts on it, I decided I'm going to use it up here. So here's my little holiday for Valentine's Day mug rug. It fits this little mug, and it's a great first project to learn on, because even if you don't have a sewing machine, you can take a needle and a thread and stitch it by yourself that way. It's not fancy stitching, nobody's going to see it. You're going to then press it over, and it's going to be secured right on here. So this is something that you can do at home with a needle and a thread and some fabric. You also don't need batting if you have flannel sheets or an old flannel washcloth, or a very old cloth diaper, or sewing, not sewing, a burp cloth. You can use that as your batting. You don't have to go out and buy fabric and process materials for this. You can use what you have, because if this is going to be your first project, you want to have it be something you feel confident about, something that you can complete, and something that you're proud about once you're done. Now you can move on from this and use your novelty fabrics to make placemats. This is just another giant mug rug. This one is cute. This one has Easter motif, little chickadees. And again, I did the same thing. I made my sandwich, put it on my machine. I did a fancy stitch this time, but usually I just do straight lines at the 45-degree angle and then this way, and it's like a grid, and I have them for every holiday in my home. So it's not a huge project, but you can start with an even smaller project, complete it, and gift it or use it at home. But I hope this is something that you might be able to give a try and have fun with. I will leave some links to some very good YouTube tutorials so that if you are someone who needs to stop a film and go back, you can use it on YouTube. And I hope this is something you'll give a try. Thanks. Thanks for watching. So many possibilities. Links to the Barn Swallow quilts and the tutorials that I mentioned will be in the credits. Remember, there are so many possibilities.